I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, April the 26th, where the funds bailed out on the cattle futures market. And we've known for quite a while that the funds, the managed money speculators have been holding up the longs for quite a while through the spring here. And they actually had more faith in the market than what your industry people did. We've had a lot of open interest, but that has all evaporated now. The funds have bailed out, lost 7,000 contracts on Wednesday, a bunch more on Thursday there, and everybody's kind of bailing out that aren't in the industry. And of course your industry's short the market, trying to hedge everything, and just too much pushing down on this futures market. And probably the worst day we've seen in the cattle market for quite a while. And not just so much the futures, but the cash market was a lot more sharply lower than what the futures were. But it's evident that on your fat cattle trade, it's all about that basis, They ought to write a song about that. But guys were scrambling on Thursday. What didn't trade on Wednesday, which was not great, on Thursday got even worse, and as we got longer into the day, into the afternoon, people were just scrambling, trying to get rid of cattle, and at a lot lower levels. We'll talk about that in a minute. But let's talk about the board on Thursday. April live cattle futures down 272, not the limit, mind you, but down 272 at 124.05. June live cattle down 297 at 115.37. Your August that we were so proud of last week that got propped way up there, and we'd been talking all spring about how we were going to hold this summer fat cattle market up, and we would be amazed if it would hold at $1.10, and a lot of people earlier in the year would be surprised if we could hold it at $1. But then last week it had launched up there pretty high. Well, down August on Thursday at 112.92. And it appears that 110 will probably succumb now, and hate to be wishy-washy on this deal, but the last week was just a mirage that we were looking at, and we kind of got a false positive out of that. Now we're getting back to reality. Look at your feeder cattle market for May, down 297 at 143.55. August was down 347 at 153.25. Your fat cattle trade, of course, we established the Southern Plains at 126 on Wednesday. Northern Plains was still holding out, and we talked about when your packers are coming in middle of the week, and you know they're hungry. It's in the spring of the year, and they're wanting to keep their kills up and supply their supplies for out front sales that they've already made. They know they've got a lot of grilling demand coming in this time of the year. But it just fell out of bed. But one note on there, on the USDA voluntary feedlot report, the regional report that you put out, where they still call feedlots, trying to talk about what's going on in the market, like we did years ago when I worked there. It was all voluntary at that time, back when we used to get 100,000 out of all 5 area feeding regions and have 500,000 negotiated sales for the week, but nothing to report on the voluntary regional feedlot report on Thursday. When we knew that we had a lot of sales out there, it's evident that they don't have any contacts to talk to anymore, or nobody wanted to talk about the down market. But when you looked at the mandatory price reporting, and you looked at all the messages that were being sent around through the day on how this cash market was crashing, you knew that what was going on. Northern Plains early in the day on Thursday selling mostly 126 to 128, which would be $2 lower, but it got worse than that. Your dress trade, which was 205 to 206 early in the day, they pulled those bids late in the morning. Did not want to buy any more cattle as the board continued to fail. But late in the day, heard some sales of $2 even dressed, and that would be a ton lower. and just everybody scrambling on there, and they weren't chasing basis anymore after they'd lost that core market there, but just wanting to get some cattle sold. The Southern Plains had a little bit of cleanup trade from 125 to 126. We saw some significant sales at 125, which would be a buck lower, and that's kind of unheard of after you've already established a market in the Southern Plains. But guys getting 125 and chasing that basis there before it totally evaporates. But also heard of some late sales in the Southern Plains, which I mean Kansas, at 122. Wow. I mean, it was falling faster than you could keep track of it. Box beef cutout values a little bit lower late in the week, but have been kind of drifting lower all week long. Choice cuts Thursday afternoon at $232.93, down just 3 cents. Selects at $219.75, down 53 cents on the day. We need a decent day in your high population areas. We really haven't got that. A decent weekend for your people in the East Coast, where your big metropolises are, where your highest populations are. We need a good weekend for those people to get out and grill and enjoy some of the springtime weather. But they had a rough winter up there too, and have not had a good weekend yet. Going to be rainy all weekend this weekend out there, and it's not good for beef demand. Look at the slaughter for the week, 478,000. That is 3,000 more than the same week a year ago, but 7,000 less than last week. We're hoping for a good Saturday this week. We had good slaughter all the way through the bulk of the traditional week last week, but then being a holiday weekend with Easter last week, the Saturday was kind of a fail. So we're hoping that this Saturday has higher change speeds and more slaughterhouses open, so they can catch back up at least with last week and beat a year ago this week once again. But your actual slaughter come in on Thursday for the week ending April the 13th, which had your dressed steer weights at 864 pounds, not dropping significantly, but 1 pound less than the previous report, which at least kind of gives you a little bit of confidence in what should be going on. Let's talk about everything else that's going on. Your real-time index on Cattle Market Central on feeder cattle averaging 800 pounds after falling $2.42 on Thursday, which is a ton, on Wednesday. Thursday was down $1.85 all the way down to 143.12 based on that 800-pound steer. And no longer, with the exception of a few premium sales in the Northern Plains and in the Midwest, are you able to get $150 for not just one 800-pound steer, but a whole pot load of top quality 800-pound steers. $150 is almost unattainable. There was a few sales in the Southern Plains, like Pratt, Dodge City, places like that sell a lot of cattle, had a pot load of cattle bring almost 150 or right there at 150, weighing flat 800 pounds. But that's going to be lost now as we go on further. And on a 900-pound steer, not just one, but a load of 900-pound steers, where we were getting well into the 140s last week, $140 flat on an even 900-pound load of steers is almost unattainable there. If you guys are looking for some loads of yearling feeder cattle, commodity type cattle to feed, and you want to take advantage of this drop here late this week, get on to the board sale at Montgomery Stockyards, Montgomery, Alabama. They've got a board sale on Monday. They've got 70 loads of yearling feeder cattle on there. And that's a place where you guys that feed some commodity cattle, and you don't have to worry about if they got hair on them or nothing, because we're going into the summertime. But get on to Montgomery Stockyards board sale and bid on those 70 loads of yearling feeder cattle that they have saved up for Monday's sale. Let's talk about some auctions that went on Thursday. Pratt, Kansas, big sale in south central Kansas. 4,800 head of cattle there at Winter Livestock in Pratt, Kansas. Feeder steers $5 to $6 lower. Spots $10 to $12 lower. and there were a lot of spots on Thursday that were 10, 12 bucks lower, not on odd bunches of yearling feeder cattle, but on loads of yearling feeder cattle. It just fell out of bed, but the biggest spots of those 10 to 12 lower were on those light 9-weight cattle because of the board and everything that's just evaporated here in the last few days. Feeder heifers 2 to 4 bucks lower. Calves were kind of uneven to $3 lower as we've lost that big push of stocker cattle going into those big turnout regions there. And now we're just looking at odd cattle, and some guys aren't quite ready to turn their cattle out yet for summertime, but a lot of soft calves in the auctions right now, new crop type calves, which aren't nearly as attractive to turn out as those old crop stockers. Another sale on Thursday. Farmers and Ranchers Livestock in Salina, Kansas, 4,400 head there in north central Kansas. Feeder steers up there, $4 to $6 lower. Calves were 2 to 4 bucks lower. Look at an individual quote, just tells you what the market is now. And this is north central Kansas, might be considered the southern plains, but right there on I-70, which I consider to be the divide between the northern plains and the southern plains right there, right on I-70. But 134 head of 786 pound steers bring 142. And that's the market now, guys. But look at some other markets. Lamona, Iowa had a big sale, 2,800 head plus for them. That's an awful good sale for Jason Allen and Jared Miller, the world champion livestock auctioneer that's in management there at Lamoni. M.L. McCray, I talk about his cattle a lot. He was a neighbor just north of me down there in DeKalb County, Missouri. Backgrounds a lot of cattle and does it right. And his yearling feeders attract the most attention of anybody in the Midwest right there. He had 12 loads in Lamona on Thursday, and I've never known him to have bad timing on a market, but he kind of hit it this week right on a bad day. But 12 loads of yearling feeder cattle there, most all of them weighing from 8 1/4 up to 980 pounds. But 687 head of yearling feeder cattle, sells all black, good steers right there, backgrounded but not pushed. Average 917 pounds. Average price on them $133.35, and that is a foot lower than they would have brought just not that many days ago. But you know, you live and die by the sword, and that's the way things go. The best sale probably on Thursday was in Clarinda, Iowa. I'm not sure if they had good reception on their cell phones. I know they have a National Beef Wire in the sale there because we collect information from their sale, their John Anderson sale. And so I knew what the market was, but they had some local demand, and probably the best sale all day anywhere in the country on Thursday was Clarinda, Iowa. Give you a quote out of there. 55 head of 888 pound steers, nearly 900 pounds at $145.75, and that would be awful good the way things are. But that's your feeder flash for Friday.